Should be going live I think we're live now, actually. Just double check. Yep, there we are.
You can just share out the link real quick?
Yep. Okay, I can hear myself on the link, so that's good.
We're almost pros at this now, man.
I know. Yes.
It's not showing up, man. Is it showing up to you?
All right, there we go. I just tweeted out the link. All right. Hello and welcome to the Dallas Soccer Show. I'm Dustin Nation, and today we've got another happy hour for you, this time with a little bit of lower league flair to it. So grab a drink, head on over to the chat, send us some questions. Tonight, as always, we're joined by Jonathan Ross. Jonathan, how's it going?
It's going well, Dustin. Today I'm starting off with the craft beer because I realized after recording last week's that sucking a Bloody Mary through a straw. I swear this is my first one. is not good podcasting behavior because as I went and listened to the pod last time, I could hear every time I decided to take a drink out here. So yeah, this time.
And here I was blaming Followell's mic for that.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was Followell's mic.
Yeah. And also joining us, Jonathan Kalura of Bug Eaters FC. What's going on, Jonathan? Kalura.
Thanks for having me.
Got to distinguish between the Jonathans this week.
Yeah, well, the big thing is thanks for giving me an excuse to get cleaned up.
You know what day it is.
Enjoying a Bug Eaters ale from Nebraska.
Nice.
Very nice.
Wait, so we were supposed to shower for this podcast? Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
Yes.
pants are optional. Shower is not.
Okay. Dang it.
And on his back porch, it looks like Michael Hitchcock. How's it going, Michael?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to spending time with you guys and talking a little lower league soccer.
Yeah. Do you prefer Hitch or Michael or?
Yeah, I've been called Hitch since 7th grade, but call me Michael, Mike, Hitch, whatever. I've been called worse, so your call.
All right. Gotcha. And what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah, I went. I've gone a couple rounds deep, but right now Modelo Especial. So keeping it neutral, not picking any favorites. Didn't go with the Napa Valley wine or the Orale beer for the Vaqueros. Just keeping it simple.
Very cool. And joining us, better late than never. Don't worry, we just got started. Damon Gokner of Diablos, the lower league E-Cup champion.
Yeah, celebrity.
Damon.
Lower league celebrity E-Cup champion. Pivoting into esports soon.
Celebrity. They've changed the definition.
Set that bar low, didn't they?
Okay.
Set that bar low,
Celebrity.
didn't they? I know. Listen, hey, I just accept the awards, man. I don't name them.
You just get the silverware. That's it.
Oh, they don't even give a trophy. I got to buy my own.
The best kind.
Yeah, I bought myself a trophy.
Oh, I want a trophy.
All right, exactly. How are you guys tonight? Everybody
Great.
socially distanced?
Oh, only my dog here in the room with me, so we're good.
Perfect. Yeah, what a crazy world.
Yeah, how's everybody doing? Like with all of this?
Yeah, it's a challenging time, right? I mean, it's for anyone in the sports business right now, it's not easy. But for teams at our level, the month of March is when the majority of your season seat holders come in, your sponsors, come online. For this thing to hit with the timing, there's sort of a double whammy effect there. So at the end of the day, man, entrepreneurs will get through this. The guys that are really committed and want to do this for their community, doing it for all the right reasons, will be fine. But you're going to see some collateral damage. You're going to see a number of teams, I think, that don't make it through the challenges that we're going to face here over the next couple of months. That said, Jonathan and Damon, both who I know really, really well, man, they're owners for a reason, right? And so guys like us, we're going to power through. We'll get through this thing, but it's not easy for anyone in the sports world, but especially lower division minor league teams.
And to pivot off that, I think, there are a couple things. It's, it's not just the effect of the team itself with the sponsors, and it's the effect it is to the fans as well. So you're looking at fans who now don't have disposable income because they potentially have lost a job or, the stress of the financial stress of the situation. So, on the other side of this, I completely agree with Hitch that some teams may not make it. And, it's not just here in the United States, it's also in England. That's a difficult situation over there where they completely halted the season. So it's going to be, I think the effects of this will be long lasting. I think it's going to take some time for things to settle down and get back to normal. But I think, speaking on Bug Eater's behalf, we're very fortunate in that we're dynamic, in that we can scale down very quick, and we're almost a pay-as-you-go team. If we don't use a stadium, we don't pay for it. The staff we have is limited. We use a lot of volunteers, and we were talking about this about a month ago, coming up with a plan of what do we do if this should happen. But it's going to be unfortunate. There are going to be a lot of losses. There are going to be teams that don't make it through this. But I think the main thing right now is to focus on the local communities and what we can do for them.
How about you, Damon? You obviously it's pivoting to the esports.
Yeah, we're moving the whole deal. We're moving the whole ship, taking the whole business model, throwing it out the window. Yeah, it's all
Love
delivery now. Yeah, we do soccer as a delivery service. We play in your front yard. You can watch through your front window. We live stream the games, drive around with vans. No, it's no, man. Like I think everybody's exactly right. I think the impact we don't really even understand fully. I think I think Jonathan hit the nail on the head from a community perspective, and Hitch and I had already talked about, to your point as well, like, let's be cognizant that what we've done in the past with pricing, with specials, with promotions, that they might not be received the same way, that we might have to approach things differently this season, and for our own club, measure success in a different way financially as well. And we've had conversations already with sponsors that have been like, hey, what's going on? Hey, you know what I mean? They feel the roughness in the waters. And some of our sponsors, I was mentioning to another NPSL owner today, is our title sponsor is right here, Eastside. It's a bar. He can't serve anything right now. He's dead in the water with a staff of, I think, 60 or 80 across his 3 bars that he owns. And then, right behind that, our apparel partner that's been great, Six Stitch. They've done an awesome job and have got us some awesome merch, and we've been so thankful for them. But their biggest thing and their biggest business is off of live events and concert tours and churches and corporations, and nobody's doing those events either. So it's just this whole weird effect. But I think, locally, yes, massive impact. But I think the bigger one that Hitch and I have talked about is, what is this going to do to some leagues? You know what I mean? That don't have the revenue coming in, that don't have the models to sustain. So it's just going to be really interesting to see what this does to the landscape of American soccer yet again.
Yeah, and I think we should probably back up just a second. So you and Hitch co-own the Denton Diablos.
That's correct.
Hitch, you own the Fort Worth Vaqueros as well as a team in Napa Valley, right?
Investor in Napa Valley, but
Okay.
Yeah, majority owner of Fort Worth and partners and co-owners with Damon. Yeah, so 3 NPSL teams total.
Okay, and then Jonathan Kalura, you're up in Omaha with Bug Eaters, and don't you own a team in England as well?
Involved with. England. So I've been involved in teams in England, been with Hitch, Bradford Park Avenue, who my business partner here in Dallas, he owns that team.
Okay.
So have been working with Richie at Kettering. And Richie also owns South Bend Lions in USL2. And so my involvement there is consultant. With Bradford Park Avenue, I was a director. With Alfreton, I was a director. And I was supposed to actually be in England this week, but obviously that wasn't meant to be. But no, I'm actively involved in England, specifically at the league level.
Gotcha. And MPSL, they shut down their whole league, didn't they, for this season?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is this I see on Twitter from Diablos going up a league? Was that a joke or is that
No, listen. I would ask you to read the tweet. What did the tweet say? Because I don't know that the Denton Diablos ever said anything about going up a league.
You just said we're moving up, right?
Yes. Or, no, and
Okay.
I didn't even say yeah. And I think it said we can't wait to come back and be moving up. And it was a picture of a guy going up for a header. So I don't think Listen, we have all the highest aspirations. But Jesus, don't start signing big checks yet, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. We'd like to play.
That first year really treated you well.
Yeah. If it and what's funny is that Hitch will tell you the first thing I did is I saw like Buzz from Third Degree pick it up and run with it. And I was like, I sent Hitch a text and was like, is there something I need to know? Like, we have a conversation. Listen, I'm all about an FU and like, let's go. Like, you know what I mean? That's the way the world works. But hey, what happened here? So
I thought League MX was extending into the U.S. and you guys were the first team to sign on.
I love it. I love it. Listen, that's not a bad idea.
Get that going, Jonathan. Get that one going.
That's not a bad idea. Listen, we can make some. We can move on that. NAFTA plays well.
What about the England leagues and the league that Bug Eater's in? Are they completely halted or?
What league are you in?
Hold on, let me take a guess. The Gulf Coast Premier League.
Well, technically that's where we are this season. And so last season we played exhibition, but we played under the registration of Gulf Coast Premier League. And so this season we're actually going to be playing in a conference that was going to have between 5 and 6 teams. And so that's been put on hold indefinitely. No decision has been made to officially cancel the season, but common sense is going to say it's quite unlikely that anything's going to happen. If we can, we'll play something. I don't know that it'll necessarily be a league format, but we're talking to teams and we've had teams contact us wanting to do something. But I think right now it's too early to say. But in England, they were in full season and that's been completely halted. And so you've had, everything below the National League was canceled. Everything below step 3 of the non-league, I believe, to step 6 was null and void, which triggered lawsuits and all kinds of messes over there. So now they're evaluating it again. But, with promotion relegation, one team specifically, South Shields, felt that nullifying the league was going to have a big financial impact on them, obviously, because they were running away with the league, that they wouldn't get promotion, et cetera. So a lot of different issues going on over there. One of the big issues is paying the players and the contract. So a lot of teams aren't able to pay because they go on a week by week basis. So now they're appealing to the British government. The British government has offered up to 80% of compensation for wages. And so now teams are applying to see if they can get it. It's really an interesting situation, but it's basically canceled indefinitely, or at least postponed indefinitely. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because you can essentially take a full season and throw it out the window and see what happens. So teams in the relegation zone are going to be the beneficiaries of voiding out a league or voiding out a season, versus teams who threw a lot of money at winning promotion who are effectively going to, they won't get that money back because they were tied into player contracts and that money's already been spent, but they have to do it all over again. So now they're reevaluating what it is. What I'm hearing is, National League is working with teams. They're trying to figure out what would be, a solution to this. What I'm hearing from team owners is that they're proposing to take the remaining games times a point per match and finish out the season looking like that, just to figure out where the table falls. Ultimately, that would, from a promotion relegation standpoint, that may make some sense. A team like Bradford, which was sitting in the relegation zone, and on the opposite end of the table, you've got Kings Lynn, who threw a massive budget. It just doesn't make sense to reward a team that was in the relegation zone, which really honestly had no chance of getting out of it, versus a team that threw a lot of money away, or threw a lot of money at gaining promotion and ultimately rewarding the team that didn't belong there.
So for the teams that are here in the U.S. what for the players, I think Damon, you said you guys are a lot pay as you go, but for the players, are they considered? I mean, so if they're furloughed, are they getting unemployment these days? Or are they more tied into like the gig economy where they're just kind of, hey, go find something else? I think Damon, you're on mute.
Yeah, so my bad. So us in particular, there we go. Because of our reliance in the past on NCAA players, we haven't been able to pay players. So it doesn't impact us from that perspective. But we have staff. So just like Jonathan talked about, we were smart enough to write in some of our contracts, and some of our partners, it's like, I can't rent my stadium right now if I wanted to. They're not going to rent it to me. Like, it's closed down. The facility, University of North Texas has all facilities closed down until, I think now at this point, sometime in May. So it's just a continuous, so from that perspective, we're lucky in that we get to scale down, but some of our, our general manager and some of the people on payroll, we've talked to them and said, hey, there's nothing we can do right now. You don't have, our coach can't coach, our general manager can't manage. You can't sign sponsors right now. We're not selling season seats. We're doing a lot of this, and we're doing a lot of, trying to do things to support the community. So we're buying gift cards and giving those out on our live streams. We're supporting our sponsors and things of that nature. But no, it's tough in that regard.
But let's say we pivot off of the heavy subject and let's talk about something a little happier. Let's just talk about regular old soccer. So I did have a question, and Jonathan Kalura, you and I have had an interview on my other podcast, FC Nation, about kind of some like owning a lower league team, and I think Damon, you and I had one as well. But specifically, Jonathan and Hitch, you guys both have experience in England as well. So I'm curious, like what is y'all's experience? Is like, what's the difference between lower league English soccer and lower league US soccer?
I'll go first, Hitch, and then I'll pivot to you. But it's massive, absolutely massive. I would say here in the U.S., you're able to build sustainable models. I think the fan base that you can build here in the U.S., attendance-wise, we get about the same attendance that a lot of the non-league clubs in England get. But the difference is that we're not locked into high payments. And I can tell you that in England, non-league is almost unsustainable. And it's because you have teams that have come through like Salford who've, pushed it up, at the level that Bradford plays. You're looking at £6,000 to £7,000 a week in player contracts. So if you're doing that and you're getting an attendance of 300 to 600 a match, it's going to be exceptionally difficult to find sustainability, even if you do a fantastic job of selling club shop items as well as getting sponsors. And so, from a quality standpoint, I think the game here is different. It's a faster game here. there in the non-league. It's all about how big you are and how physical you are. This past season, I had 3 players from 2018 play in the non-league. My striker Danny with Maidenhead, he'll likely be in the league next season, and then my keeper Jack Bennett, who's with Kettering, and then Lewis Rathbone, who was with Bradford, and he's currently with Earlham. But I think there it's a little bit, like I said, it's more physical, but it's more of a full-time game. And here, I think it's more of a skilled speed game for, just athletes more than anything else. Hitch, what do you have on that?
Yeah, sorry, I dropped off there for a second. Just logged back on. What was the question, Dustin?
We're just talking about the differences between the lower league in England versus the lower league in the U.S. and kind of what the dichotomy is between, the top tier leagues and the lower leagues in both places.
Yeah, no, I do agree. It's extremely intense and competitive at that lower league level in England. It's about livelihoods and jobs, and not that it's not the same here. It's just a little bit of a different culture, right? And there, when you're at that national league level and above, it's about being in the shop window and showcasing yourself. And so there's a certain level of intensity that I think you see in the games over there that you see here at times, but it's not necessarily at the same level. Now, when you look at player to player, there are certainly players who have the ability that are playing in NPSL and UPSL and the Gulf Coast League that could go over there and could compete for sure. So the level, and I always wonder about that. If the Denton Diablos or Fort Worth Vaqueros played Alfredton Town, what would that look like? And I think it would be a pretty competitive game as a one-off game. I think over the balance of a season, though, it's pretty intense. And so, the travel there, it's just, the weather conditions, it's challenging. And so I don't know if a lot of the American players can assimilate really well to that, but I think talent-wise and ability, it certainly is comparable.
I would disagree with you on one thing, and that's travel. Here in the U.S., the distances we have are so brutal. Extensive. And last season we went to Little Rock, which I think was 10 and a half. And then the following weekend we went to Chattanooga, which was 14 each way. But in England, it everything there is a day trip. And, but you're absolutely right. The intensity of a full season, it would be interesting to see how players at this level would be able to compete, given a full season. I wish we had that opportunity. I know that obviously Nice is looking to do a similar schedule. Be interesting to see how those players do the second half, because I do think a lot of them are used to playing a half season if you compare it to some of the international leagues.
Yeah, and you guys all have different setups with how you set up your teams, right? Because Damon, I know you were just talking about, but you have some NCAA players,
Yep.
And you kind of really lean in on the development aspect, right? And
we have, yes.
The Vaqueros have kind of a different model, right? So maybe talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about the differences there.
Yeah, no, the reality is starting a club from scratch a year ago at this time, right? We had to find the best players available we could. And the majority of those that we could lean on and that we had relationships with right away were really close to graduates of high school because of our coaching staff and the relationships we have with the rest of our staff, or guys that were already in college a couple of years. So because of that, we 100% relied very heavily on that. Now, that being said, our captain and some of our other key pieces were guys that weren't in college. And we leaned and had a roster that included 10, 12, 15 guys that were not in college. But yes, we did. And that was for a lot of different reasons, mostly availability and quality of talent, right? Moving forward, though, this year we had to face the reality of not being able to use a single one of those guys in the U.S. Open Cup. So we had already kind of, this is life. Life is you have this 5-year plan, and then the U.S. Open Cup and coronavirus decide that they're going to like accelerate and change and morph and cause you to take different avenues, right? So, no, we weren't anticipating getting to, because, you know, in Hitch, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they've historically, up until the last year or two, been similar in that they relied on a few college guys to first start the club and then build it with more and more guys. And, you know, they've got more now of they've done a better job of getting guys from the from the sidekicks and from the outlaws. So they have some, you know, some professionals that come back, so they're in the area. But, you know, ultimately we knew, and as a front office staff, we had talked about, we're going to have to long-term find some sort of, you know, closer relationship with players in the community if we want to theoretically talk about playing in fall leagues, or, you know, really going deep in the playoffs for NPSL, or continuing to fantasize with the U.S. Open Cup. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Oh, I'm curious to know about the Vaqueros and how you guys ended up with what you've got now. As far as
it was a real evolution. Yeah. So when we launched it 6 years ago, so we'll be entering our sixth, you know, summer season. Won't be the NPSL season, but we're going to play once we kick, you know, COVID-19. So we started with local players, and that was important because we were bringing, you know, minor league, lower division, whichever name you want to call it, soccer to Fort Worth for the first time, and wanted to provide opportunities to local players. And so it was a lot of the 18, 19, 20-year-old player, elite high school player, guys from the local adult leagues, and some other good players from Fort Worth and surrounding communities that played for the team. We quickly realized that that was a challenge, right? You're playing against teams that they're bringing in players from UVA and Indiana and, you know, top schools, and it was tough. So we did that for a couple of years, and then started to evolve where we started using college players in addition to local players. Still committed to developing that local player, providing that opportunity. Had a lot of success in starting to get guys an opportunity to play at a higher level professional soccer, outdoor. And then really, 3 years ago, so halfway through this thing, made the decision that, you know, we're going to bring in a head coach, Nick Stavro, former, you know, Sidekicks player and coach. And with that, players who were playing professional indoor at that time, the Sidekicks was the only team in town. They're looking for a place to play in their off season for indoor. And so give them a platform, an opportunity to play year round. So started bringing in professional indoor players. And so last couple of seasons, you know, the team has been built on players that play pro indoor for half the season, or half the year rather, and then they'll come play for the Vaqueros. And so now there's two teams in town, the Mesquite Outlaws and obviously the Dallas Sidekicks. So the majority of the team, not 100%, but majority of the team are that level player, and then a combination of players that are at the end of their pro career or have just retired and moved to Dallas for personal reasons. And in some cases, because life after soccer includes coaching youth soccer, and there's no better youth soccer market in the country for coaching than Dallas Fort Worth. You could argue Southern California is a better youth soccer market, but Dallas is a close second. But when it comes to earning a paycheck as a former pro player, this is a great place to be. So, you know, the pro indoor teams and now the Vaqueros give them an opportunity to keep playing the game they love at a high level and stay relevant as a player and transition to coaching after soccer.
So how much of that season overlaps then? So between the indoor and
Yeah, so traditionally the answer is 0. So we thought we had a really good plan.
Well, I'm sorry. I should have started it with normally how much does it?
Yeah, so
now you might have to play some double headers or something.
Well, no. So what happened this year is the U.S. Open Cup, which the Diablos and the Vaqueros both made, which is awesome, and we're pumped up about playing in it once they decide what those dates are going to be after this virus. But so originally the U.S. Open Cup would start in May, which is when our season starts, and there's 0 overlap. So there's no issues there. This year they pushed it up to March, and as Damon mentioned, you know, the Diablos had to reinvent themselves because they were a team that were built on high-level elite college players for the most part. Well, they weren't eligible for the Open Cup. Well, the Vaqueros had the same issue, but it was on the other side of things. Is the end of the indoor season overlapped with the Open Cup. And so that's the only conflict that we would have been that U.S. Open Cup first round. And if the Mesquite Outlaws and Dallas Sidekicks would have made the playoffs, it would have been at the same time. And so we had plan A, B, and C ready to roll, and none of the above ended up. We moved forward with none of them, right?
Plan D.
Yeah. Yep.
Canceled. Postponed. NPSL season canceled, but yeah, U.S. Open Cup postponed.
I think it's technically furloughed because it's going to go back.
It's laid off. Be the first thing to call back. We'll be your first ones to call you back when we're ready.
Jonathan, what about you up there in Omaha land with the way you set up your team? I know they got Creighton's up there. You use a lot of Creighton players.
We know Creighton. We've had some Creighton guys, but we play at Morrison Stadium, which is Creighton's facility. University of Nebraska at Omaha. They supply us quite a few players. That's the other Division I program by Bob Warming, who used to be Creighton's head coach when I was growing up. We use a lot of we're mostly college players. And so we have a lot of NAIA schools that send to us. Concordia, Midland, Hastings, Bellevue University, just to name a few of them. But we've really tapped into that network. It's become quite competitive to be on the team. We have those guys, and then we have a few alumni. We do have a few Creighton alum who play on the team as well. And I think it's a good balance to have those. They tend to be a little bit of the leaders. The feedback we've had from the local schools is that it's absolutely helping their players develop. But we want to stay with that model. We want to stay with the focus on the college players. It's not just the D1, but also the NAIA schools. Ultimately, and I mentioned working with Kettering and Ritchie, I want to launch an academy in Omaha with the Bug Eaters eventually. Obviously, that's been put off for some time, but I want to see kind of a middle step between the youth academies and who we are to kind of put an elite level in there, and that's something that we're looking at doing. But our model's absolutely all college, and the reason that we focus on that is because of the demand. And when I launched the team, I said I wanted to focus on local development. And so everybody who plays for us is affiliated with the state of Nebraska in some way. They're either playing for a school in Nebraska or they're a local resident.
Very cool. We do have a couple questions from YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Thanks for joining. So Charles would like to know if Damon has a brother named Graham.
I do.
He does.
That's it.
All right.
It's easy. Next.
Next.
Hard hitting.
Line him up, knock him down.
That's it. He's a premium season ticket holder, and you can find him at all the Diablo games with my nephew and nieces. Sitting
Can you hear him
sideline.
cheer over Chad's daughters?
No. He's got 4 daughters.
They're
They're
loud.
like banshees. They are. They're awesome, though. He's got his own cheering section everywhere he goes. It's amazing.
All right. Inside Out FC says, how do y'all feel about the change to the starting date of the U.S. Open Cup? Was this a shock, or was this something y'all saw coming down the pipe?
We had birdies whisper in our ear in October, November that they were going to change the structure and that it could include an earlier start date to expand the overall offering to make room for additional teams. Because NISA was coming in, USL was expanding, there was just going to be more teams. And so the first mentions of it came in October, November. But at that point, we didn't even know. The funny thing is we started planning to be in the Open Cup just in case, like, oh shit, just in case we make it, we might want to think about this so we don't get caught in 3 months with our pants down. Before the U.S. Open Cup told us we were in the Open Cup, because we knew, like, by the time they told us, which was late December, we'd already had 2 tryouts and been communicating and been pulling in guys, and we're setting up things over the Christmas break for guys that were available and coming back and graduating. And so, yeah. And to your point, to answer the other part of the question, not ideal for any of the gentlemen on this call, I would assume, for a multitude of reasons. But if it means the tournament is bigger and is moving in a better direction, then, I guess that's the necessary evil of it. The FA Cup is almost year round. So
I think that to add to that, if we want to play in it, we have to play in qualifiers.
Yeah.
So those qualifiers happen in the off season for us, which would be in the fall. So essentially, one thing we have done is we've taken that group of alumni that I've mentioned and local players, and we've set them up that we're almost going to have a completely second team to play in Open Cup qualifiers and potentially in the Open Cup, which is unfortunate because the core of our team are the college players. And so, Hitch's model, I would imagine, is the one that is going to be the most successful in the Open Cup, with having those dedicated players. But for us, that's ultimately what we were looking at 60 days ago, was setting up a second team to play in qualifiers in the fall.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I think the reality of the Open Cup is if U.S. Soccer is going to invest more in it, as Damon mentioned, make it a bigger event, and we know what the schedule looks like. We just have to plan for it, right? And we're all successful entrepreneurs and pretty good at doing these types of things. So, for us, we realized this year that if the indoor teams would have made the playoffs and the Open Cup played as scheduled, we would have been playing with a lesser team than what we will be playing with this summer. But that's the gig, right? And so, for me, it's one of the great competitions. I love the Open Cup. Played in it, won it when I was at the LA Galaxy, second place when I was at FC Dallas. And so, now to own teams that are in it, it's pretty special. And so for me, what's best is what's best for the growth of the game. And so if starting earlier and it means they can invest more, dedicate more time, resources to it, I'm all for it. And we'll just figure out how to put the best possible team on the field.
Is that the case for a lot of the teams that are playing in those early rounds or playing in the kind of the even before the Open Cup that are actually playing through the qualifiers? Are they all kind of in the same situation as you guys are?
Well, I can't speak to the qualifiers. The NPSL, the NPSL, you make the first round proper if you qualify through the NPSL, which isn't easy to do. So I don't know how the qualifying is. Jonathan could probably speak to that, Kalora. But for me, if they're going to start every year in March, and we just have to plan for that and be able to put a good team. And fortunately, in Dallas-Fort Worth, we're in a talent-rich environment, so there's lots of great players that to be able to play in the U.S. Open Cup's a pretty attractive draw for players and for coaches and for executives to be a part of that. So as long as I think this year was the biggest field of teams, ever, I think it was 100 teams that's in it this year. Teams that aren't willing to adapt, they're not going to play. And there's teams that passed up on the invitation that qualified. So I don't know how the qualifying rounds work, which, Rayados, which is a big local team, makes every year. But for us, we're just going to have to adapt and come up with a plan. And hopefully it's a problem we have every year.
The qualifying rounds begin in the fall, and essentially that's where a large number of the teams come in. Basically, to go into qualifiers, you have to submit an application. You've got to have a stadium, et cetera. It's and you have to belong to a league that is I think you have to have at least 10 games to be able to qualifiers. Last season, because we played a full exhibition season, we wanted to play in Open Cup qualifiers, but we were not allowed to. What you'll see is a lot of teams go in the fall. Most of those teams will be UPSL because UPSL doesn't have the automatic qualification. But it's something that we're absolutely looking into. If that opportunity comes to us, we'd love to do it. NPSL and obviously USL2 get the automatic qualifiers, and Hitch was very fortunate to get 2 of those spots.
NISA too.
Yeah, that's right. NISA as well. But NISA and then USL1 added to it.
Yep.
We got another YouTube. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, we got another YouTube question. Caitlin Riley asks, "What's the meaning behind bug eaters?"
So if a lot of Nebraskans know what bug eaters is, back in the 1800s, Nebraskans in the late 1800s were known as bug eaters. And so it comes from a time when there was essentially a a famine, and the bugs ate all of the crops. And so they said that Nebraskans had nothing to eat but bugs. And so they were labeled as bug eaters, I would guess, by our friends over in Iowa, but the name stuck. And so University of Nebraska back in the 1890s was nicknamed the Bug Eaters at one time. And I have a relative who actually played at the University of Nebraska as a Bug Eater. And so when I named the team, I figured those in the state of Nebraska would know what it was, and those outside would think we're insane and would that. So, but that's where the name came from. And so it's really a nickname for native Nebraskans. And so, Nebraskans are now known as Cornhuskers. It's more of a, I guess, an accepted nickname.
It's also a great conversation starter. I had your scarf on my desk at work for about a year and a half, and all the time, what's a bug eater? So
my favorite was somebody sent us something and said they were wearing the shirt, and somebody asked them if it was French. They thought it was pronounced bouchate.
Like,
And the answer, of course, was yes, of course it is.
Absolutely, it is. Yes.
it's not dirt, it's dirte.
So,
It's a Joe Dirt riff.
yep, Joe Dirt. No, I got you.
I'm glad somebody got it.
We're on the same wavelength.
So Hitch, I did while I've got you here, I did want to talk a little bit about your FC Dallas days. Most of our listeners are FC Dallas fans. Not to get too much into it, but like you were the GM for like what 2010 to what 2013, 14?
No. No, it was 2005 to 2009, end of 2009.
Did I? I guess the internet lied to me.
What you're saying
Okay.
is, as soon as you left, FC Dallas made it to the MLS Cup. Is that what you're saying?
With the team I built, yes.
Good answer, Hitch. Good answer.
I love it.
What's,
Yeah, by the way, David Ferreira was a player I went down to Brazil and brought back through a partnership I had structured with Atletico Paranaense. And David, who was a part of that team that you're referring to, ended up getting MVP in MLS.
Yep.
But probably the greatest contribution to local soccer and FC Dallas from that acquisition is his son, Jesus Ferreira.
Yep. Good
Who
story.
came over and at that time actually played with my son. He's a couple years older, but they played together at the academy. And right away when we saw his son Jesus play, we were like, that's going to end up being the greatest contribution to going down to Curitiba, Brazil, and bringing back David Ferreira.
Let's hope so. I don't know if he's quite caught up with his dad yet, but yeah.
Hitch, you've got Charlie Kelman, who's over there in England in
Yeah, that's right.
in League One. So I met Hitch way back when he was with FC Dallas. Actually, Hitch, I messaged with Pablo Ricchetti last week. He's the head coach of a second division club in Argentina, which is
Okay, great.
nice move for him.
Yeah.
But I'm actually a season ticket holder for FC Dallas, and shockingly, it won't shock you at all, but haven't heard a thing from them since this whole situation came about. No idea what's going on over there at FC Dallas, but no one can seem to communicate. But I don't know. Dustin, have you heard anything from them?
No, just announcements about player practice moratoriums, and I think everybody, they're just like everybody else trying to play it by ear.
I ended up they talked me into some Hall of Fame tickets, and as soon as I made the payment, I haven't heard from them since.
Shout out. Oh shit, that's great. Gonna clip this. Hitch, cue that Boris Johnson clip. Cue that Boris Johnson clip right now.
Well, I got a clip for you.
Oh,
Might be how you want to close this show. It's yeah, God. All right.
All right, we'll revisit that. Well, I was gonna ask you about your what's your most memorable thing about being at your time at FC Dallas was?
Yeah, so I love the people side of the business, right? And from 2005 2009, man, we had a great group of committed, passionate soccer people that it was all about grassroots and connecting with the community. And so from the players, we had a great group of young men as players, many of whom are head coaches right now in Major League Soccer and in college, which I think is the sign of you had a great group of players. We had a really talented front office team. It was, and the partnerships we created around the world was really forward thinking and innovative. I mean, had a great relationship with River Plate, had a terrific relationship with Atletico Paranaense, with Tigres, and that was before anyone was really doing those types of relationships and deals. So I think we were a little ahead of our time, but at the end of the day, it's the people. So it's easy to think about this great win or that difficult loss, but it's how I met Jonathan Kalora. It's how I met some really amazing people, whether they were supporters, sponsors, players, executives, staff, and they're friends for life. So for me, it's all about the people, and those were certainly the best memories.
I think it's someone who was there at that time as a fan. It was one of those things where I wouldn't miss a match, and people I know wouldn't miss a match, just because it was a fantastic fan community. And so post match, we'd all go into the club there. It's changed quite a bit since then, but we'd all hang out, have a drink. The players would all come in. We knew all the players, and so it was really a fantastic community. The relationships that were forged at that time with Tigres and Cap especially were absolutely fantastic. I remember even when Everton came and trained at FC Dallas. I mean, that was definitely well ahead of its time. I still remember the third kit, the Tigres yellow third kit that FC Dallas came up with at that time, and it was something that it's interesting that how it's evolved the game, and it's interesting how FC Dallas has absolutely evolved and how massive the academy is today. But those foundations were all laid back then, and one moment that stands out for me, and Hitch will appreciate this, was the Cap match when they played FC Dallas, and the ref, you had to convince the ref to go back on the pitch after Cap tackled them.
Yeah, that is. I'm not sure it's a highlight or not, but yeah, there was an all-out brawl, and I had to convince the official to go back onto the match and not abandon the game. And then afterwards, we all had beers in the club, and both teams were friends. But yeah, during that 90 minutes, it was pretty heated, and it was the return leg. We went down to Curitiba for preseason and played down there in their stadium. And then they came up here, and it was the return leg, and it got definitely pretty heated. That's pretty funny. I forgot about that one. Yeah, it took a lot of persuasion to get that official to go back on the field. He looked like he had seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Another YouTube question, get your mind correct, says wants to know who's responsible for that Tigres inspired third kit. Is that you, Hitch?
That's me. Yep. So we actually created one for Atletico Paranaense as well that was never produced. But yeah, the Tigres kit, and we've got a soccer room in my house that has 150 jerseys on the wall, and they were all gifts, and a bunch of commemorative Tigres kits that they gave me through that relationship. And then we've got that commemorative kit that we created. And some people may not realize that Atletico Paranaense actually wore an FC Dallas inspired kit when they played down at one of their league games in the Brazilian league, the first division down there. And we were supposed to reciprocate, and it didn't happen for a variety of reasons. But I've got that kit on the wall up there in the soccer room as well. And it's a pretty sharp looking kit. It looks a lot like AC Milan's kit. So maybe I'll go online and give it away to some fan. But it was definitely some good relationship.
So you have a soccer room, 150 kits, and you're sitting on the back in your backyard.
Yes. So I like to be around people, and I'm suffering from cabin fever. So I'm going to be outside as much as I can when the weather's nice.
Yeah, I get that. Believe me, I was.
You got to tweet out that FC Dallas inspired kit.
Yeah, I'll do that later.
really
They
interested
have.
in that.
The third kit night was a shirt off their back auction, and I have a handful of those. And I've got Carlos Ruiz, Bondi. I think I've got Wagon Fuhrer, if you remember him.
Well, that is a collector's item right there. Then
That's it. And then I also have, I think I've got Bobby's as well.
that's special. That's cool.
So Wagon Fuhrer, actually, he went to Creighton, and he lives in Nebraska, and so I should hit him up and see if he wants to get involved.
You should get a Bug-Eaters jersey on him.
That's it. Yeah, good idea.
I mean, you got him on what the pretty much every national soccer celebrity on their YouTube channels. the Alexi Lawless wear one, the most recent one, or
Alexi
was
wore
that
a
the
shirt
Cooligans?
recently. Yeah, Hitch knows Alexi quite well. You know, Alexi's he's a polarizing character. He's a big fan of the game. I had a chance to actually catch up with him down at Soccer X in Miami last fall, and he asked me to send him some stuff, so I did. But yeah, he wore that recently, and then you know, of course, my buddies Alexis and Christian with the Cooligans, they're fantastic advocates of the game, and they do make it to Dallas. I don't know if you guys have met them yet, but they'll be here when the season gets going again.
I was supposed to sit next to them at a sidekicks match, but they didn't show up, so sad tear.
They're Mesquite Outlaw fans, man. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
We're pretty close to our hour limit here. So I wanted to, before we go, give everybody. I know you guys have a lot of roots in the community. You guys have. I know I've seen a couple things come from you guys about initiatives that you've got going on right now. But I wanted to give you a chance to plug something or advertise something that you guys are working on with your community or elsewhere otherwise. So Damon, you got anything you want to plug? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, today we made additional donations, couple things. If you hit up any of our social, you'll see a couple places that you can support. So Eastside employs, and John Williams employed quite a few, almost 100 people across Denton in various bars and restaurants. And so they're doing some cool things, and we're supporting them. We're also supporting the Denton Community Food Kit, or a food closet, or whatever. I don't know the name for certain, but check our social and you'll see we donated some money and shared the link on the ways that you can support there. They're doing some good stuff and helping people in the community.
Cool. And just a note, I'll grab all these links and I'll put them in our show notes. So if you're listening to the podcast version of this, I forget exactly how, but in your podcast app, like scroll down or whatever and check out the notes, and the links will be there. So Hitch, what do you guys got going on? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, we basically took our when this thing hit on the 12th, which is really when it hit hard and the sports world paused. We took all of our marketing dollars, which were going to be focused on season seats and some pretty cool campaigns, and we didn't cancel those, but we shifted them over. And what we did with them is we're buying $25 to $50 gift cards from locally owned businesses and giving those away every day through social media campaigns for Vaqueros fans. And so obviously it's supporting a local business through the form of a gift card. It's promoting that business through what they're doing, whether it's a beer to go from the local breweries or it's takeout, curbside, or delivery service. But businesses that are open for business, we're promoting them. And then it gives back to our fans, many of which, as everyone said on this, is that are having a tough time, right? Either they've been furloughed, fired, or cut back. And so it's a tough time. So it's a chance for them to get some free food and beer on the Vaqueros. And so we're doing that campaign. And then now that we know we're going to be, sitting at home for at least another month, we've got some other things we're doing. And basically it's called a Kick COVID-19 campaigns. So if you go to our social media, you can learn all about them. But we're going to be rolling out some other things that it's all about giving back to the community who's been incredibly supportive of the team since the team launched in 2014.
Very cool. Jonathan Kalura.
So we immediately were talking about what we could do to help the community. Omaha's been impacted massively because the three big events in the city have been canceled. Obviously, College World Series is the largest event in the city. Olympic trials for swimming were canceled, and then you also had the NCAA tournament, which was one of the regionals was being hosted there. So massive impact on the city. And so, we were saying, who are we and what can we do to give back? And it's, it's difficult to do. So Omaha Foundation set up a COVID-19 response fund. And so looking at how much merchandise we have that we've paid for that's just sitting here idle, we came up with the idea of 100% of club shop sales being donated to that COVID-19 response fund. And then I said I would match 100% of it. Right now we've had 14 states, DC and Canada, over 60 orders come through. And so, being here at the house with all the stuff, I'm able to fulfill the orders. But right now with my match, we're somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 that I'll be donating next week. And so, my plug would be this is buy something from the club shop, and all of that will go to the response fund, and then I will match whatever you end up buying. So match it dollar for dollar.
Very cool. Was there some sort of clip that we were going to play? Boris Johnson? Uh-oh.
If I had the technology, I would play it, and it would be well worth your time. But unfortunately, I don't have that technology.
You're gonna have to inject that yourself, Dustin, in the pod, man.
I'll go looking for the link.
I think I put it on Twitter. If you go to my Twitter handle, you'll see a Boris Johnson highlight that's worth sharing.
Yeah, Boris Johnson diving at crotch is the deal. It's the Boris Johnson highlight of him playing a celebrity match. He's representing, I think, Liverpool against, I don't know if it's a German team.
No, it's England versus Germany. I think he headbutts I think they call it the nutsack. He headbutts the nutsack of the German
exactly what it is.
Watch out, Justin's gonna be like, "Hey, this is a family pod. I gotta edit all this out."
No, it is. No, it's the best thing ever, dude. He takes about a 7-yard run, 10-yard run, and just immediately puts his shoulders down because he gets going too far and leans too far forward and can't stop or move or redirect his weight, and just goes hurling himself right into the groin of the opposition. It is
almost like a torpedo. Like imagine
it's a rugby tackle.
A Boris Johnson torpedo. Yeah,
it's a rugby tackle, 100%. It is so great. I play that on loop whenever I'm feeling down in blue.
Very cool. All right. Well, check out each one of the guys. We'll put all of their social links in the show notes as well. You can find us online at DallasSoccerShow.com. You can find us on social at Dallas Soccer Show on Twitter. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, Jonathan.
Cheers, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys.